Okay guys, I have a guest today. His name is Michael and he's a professional in all kinds of standardized tests. Thank you so much, Michael, for joining me today.
It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you. And we're going to talk about GMAT. And you know what? Michael scored 780 out of 800 on GMAT, and I think this is pretty amazing. Like, I've never met anybody, I think, who scored that much.
It's an uncommon score.
Yeah, I think it's, well, top 5%, top 3%?
Oh, it's top 1%.
Oh, top 1%. Okay, yeah,
by
very
wide
rare.
margin. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask him questions how he did that, and he's also a tutor for GMAT. So I think it's gonna be very useful to hear his advice. So Michael, could you please tell me, like, if I want to pass GMAT and I have a target, where do I start? So what do I do first?
First of all, you start with learning where you're at, I think. So you take either a computer test, GMAT Prep, or maybe you just take the first test from the official guide, but you want to know where you stand first.
Yeah.
So otherwise it's meaningless to speak of any targets.
Yeah, so, and on average, like, if I'm medium, like average person, and I scored like this average score on the practice test, how long would it take me to get 700 plus?
I'm always asked this question, but it's always a very tough one to answer. There's no such thing as your average person.
I know,
sorry.
yeah, but like, because you
it's not a cop out. I'll explain in more detail, but it's just that depending on your educational background and on your ease at reading difficult English text and on your math level, things are going to be quite different. So if your score is average, but say your English is fluent, as is yours, for instance, and you do know some math, it's one story. And if your math is really rusty, it's going to take much longer to prepare for the GMAT. On average, if you maybe score 600 to 620 on your first computer test and you want to get a 700 score, you'll need maybe 3 to 4 months. That would be the best thing, the closest thing to average I can offer, but average doesn't make a lot of sense here, unfortunately.
Well, I can tell my story that it took me 2 months to prepare and I scored 700, but I thought I started really average because when I did that practice test, I thought it was awful because they gave me medium.
You're just plenty smart, let me put it like this, and probably quite motivated. So from, say, 600 to 700 in 2 months, that's fast, and I don't want our listeners to be discouraged because often they won't be able to repeat that. They'll need more time.
Okay. So like on average 3 to 4 months?
On the close, I've had students who took 5 lessons and maybe studied a month and got a 760. I've had students whom it took a year and a half to get a 690. So it's so different for different people. So if we talk about quantitative part, I know there are different hacks for certain tasks because there is, for example, there is a task that you can, spend 30 minutes on, but then find out a way to solve it in 2 minutes. The main hack is never ever do that. If you can't solve a problem in 3 minutes tops, don't solve it at all. Drop it like a hot plate. Basically, it's the surest way to get a low score, to spend too much time on one problem.
Right? You need to finish every single question, otherwise you get a
huge penalty. So it's a Pyrrhic victory to solve a problem even correctly in 5 minutes. So the main thing is not to do that.
So do you teach those hacks?
Of course
I was always looking for a person who can tell me all the hacks for all of those tasks.
It's a shame you didn't know me when you were prepping for your own GMAT.
But so you do, right?
I hope I would have helped. Of course I do. Without that, teaching the GMAT is pointless. I mean, there is content, and of course I also teach that, but in addition to that, you have to have test strategy. You have to know which problems to solve, which problems to drop immediately, which problems to maybe solve for like a minute and then take an educated guess. So you have a plethora of options with each problem on the GMAT, and you want to pick the best.
Yeah, I think educated guess is one of the methods I use
all the time. It's a hugely important tool. The key thing here is that it's graduate management admission test. So it's a test for managers. And one of the things it tests, you have to be able to manage your resources. Say, imagine you're an investor and you invest money into every project you come by.
Yeah.
You're not going to last long in your
Exactly.
investing career. So it's the same on the GMAT. You have to pick your battles.
Yeah. Also, another important thing, when you take this GMAT official guide and you try to solve problems and then you look in the answers and the way they advise you to solve the problem doesn't have to do anything with real tests.
Yes, sometimes, unfortunately, they will have solutions which are not just useless, I would say they're harmful. Like they'll give you a page and a half worth of some algebraic
equations, or whatever.
transformations or something, and I look at it and I'm like, okay, I used to know how to solve this problem, but I
No, I
don't
don't.
anymore. So I have to forget that first, and then I can solve the problem again. So maybe they're just concerned that people like me who teach the GMAT won't have students if they give good explanations.
Maybe.
So
Yeah, that's why.
GMAT, thanks for looking after tutors.
Yeah, and also like people who come from non-business backgrounds, they have to remember that GMAT is actually like the quantitative part. It doesn't have to do anything with business. It's just pure maths, right?
Yeah, actually a business background is not important. Otherwise, I certainly wouldn't have.
You have mathematical background, right?
Yes, yes. I don't know that much about business. It doesn't matter for the GMAT. It's not a problem.
Okay.
The logic here is they'll probably teach you what you need to know about business in business school. So the main thing for you is to have good math and good logic. Yeah.
And maths is quite like school level. It's not university level, right?
Definitely not. Mostly there are some things which are not studied at school, but those are not the hardest things on.
So they're mostly
GMAT
those tasks that we would get at school with tasks with asterisks. So it's not like an average task, but
yes, it's close to that, right?
Okay. And what about verbal part? So for non-native speaker,
on average, it's harder than math by a wide margin.
Okay.
So it's harder because first of all, it's not your native language, obviously, and second because.
You compete against native speakers, right?
Yes, right. And also it's hard because in math, you can solve the problem and it's very clear whether you've solved it or not. But on verbal, sometimes it's very fuzzy. And the lower your level is, the fuzzier it is. So the more you study and the more you learn, the clearer and the more logical it becomes. So actually verbal is logical, otherwise mathematicians wouldn't have such a huge advantage on the GMAT. But you have to learn the right things to understand that it's actually quite clear-cut and logical in most cases.
Yeah, but for native speakers, they would also need some time to prepare the verbal part.
Yeah,
so it's not like vocabulary test or something.
No. It's a myth that native speakers have that easy of a time preparing for the GMAT. Otherwise, the US wouldn't have such a blooming market of GMAT prep. Otherwise, native speakers would just pass the test with flying colors and be done with it. Nope. It takes them quite a lot of effort too.
And for non-native speakers, what would you say is the minimum level of English to start preparation?
Well, usually upper intermediate at least. I think I had one student who was closer to the intermediate level and who got a great score, but that's an exception, and he was extremely methodical and logical, so he would really amaze me by getting questions correctly even when he didn't know quite a few words in the actual test. So that's an exception. Usually you need fairly fluent English, especially your reading skills are important. Your speaking skills are not important.
Yeah, because you're not speaking.
Yeah, they're not tested, but your reading skills are paramount here.
Okay, and maybe you could give like some basic strategy for preparing for GMAT, like where you start. So you take the practice test, what you do next? Like,
I'd say you find your problem areas and focus on those first, but you want to do a fairly comprehensive review of all the content on the GMAT. You do practice questions and you don't do too many. Some
Yeah.
people solve 5,000. That's not the best strategy, or 10,000 problems. Usually, those problems will be of lower quality, and the main problem, sorry for the pun, is that your work will be of lower quality because you just won't have enough attention. So that's not the right strategy. The right strategy is to solve maybe a few hundred problems, the official guide, and some.
That's what I did. Yeah, like 200.
Yeah, that's
quantitative problems.
a much better strategy. You solve just a few hundred problems, but you zero in on any mistakes you make, and you resolve those problems a lot.
Yeah,
So
and
several times, not just once.
yeah, and I'd also say like a month before your actual test, take a practice test.
Of course.
See your score, and then in a week take it again, because my score was the average of my 3 practice tests.
That's actually pretty normal, right?
Yeah.
So if you're scoring 670, 680, and 650 on the GMAT prep, maybe something magical will happen and you'll get 700. But I haven't seen that happen yet.
Okay.
So of course you want at least to have your target score several times on practice test. Preferably better than that, because on test day you will be nervous.
Stressed,
Yeah,
yeah.
you'll be stressed. You want to prepare for that in advance, but still you may get a lower score. So you do want to overlearn stuff, basically.
Okay. And at what stage would you advise to hire tutors or hire you?
That strongly depends on how much time you have and how much money you have, obviously.
Yeah,
So-
because GMAT tutors cannot be cheap, because I was interviewing like 15 tutors, even from Canada and States, and somebody charged like, I don't know, $50 an hour, and I asked them, what is the maximum your student got? And he was like, 600. I was like,
Wow.
okay, and it wasn't really...
anti-wow.
It wasn't really polite to say, okay, the interview is over, so I continued talking to him, and I realized, yeah, well,
Yeah.
so yeah, GMAT tutors should be expensive.
Yeah, in my experience, all the good GMAT tutors I know are fairly expensive.
Yeah.
And that's in Russia, where they're actually way less expensive than in the US.